Snow fell thick that night, heavy enough to swallow the city whole. Claire sat huddled in the empty bus station, wearing only a thin dress, no coat, no home. Her husband had thrown her out hours earlier, divorce papers still crumpled in her hand. His final words echoed in the silence. "You're useless, because you can't have children." Her fingers turned purple from cold. Her heart felt dead. Then a man with 3 children stopped in front of her. She looked up through the snow. Was this just random kindness, or the moment everything would change? The man crouched down to her eye level. He had dark hair dusted with snow, and eyes that held something Claire recognized. Grief, maybe. Or exhaustion. Behind him, 3 children stood close together, their breath making small clouds in the frozen air. "Are you waiting for someone?" the man asked. Claire shook her head. Her voice came out thin. "The buses stopped running. How long have you been out here?" She didn't know. Time had blurred after her husband shoved her out the door, after he threw her belongings into the hallway, after the neighbors turned away and closed their doors. The bus station had been the only place with a bench and a roof. "A while," she said. The smallest child, a boy who looked about 6, tugged at the man's coat. "Dad, she's really cold." The man glanced back at his son, then at Claire again. He seemed to be making a decision. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" Claire wanted to lie. She wanted to say yes. She had a hotel room, a friend's couch, anything. But the truth sat heavy in her chest, and she was too tired to carry it anymore. "No." The middle child, a girl with brown hair in 2 braids, stepped closer. "We can't just leave her here." "Emily's right," the oldest one said. He looked about 12, tall and serious. "It's too cold." The man stood up slowly. He looked at his children, then back at Claire. Something shifted in his face. "I'm Jonathan Reed," he said. "These are my kids, Alex, Emily, and Sam." Claire pulled the thin fabric of her dress tighter around her knees. "Claire." Jonathan took off his coat and held it out to her. "Put this on." "I can't. You'll freeze without it." His tone left no room for argument. Claire took the coat. It was still warm from his body. She wrapped it around her shoulders and felt the first relief from the cold in hours. "My car's just across the street," Jonathan said. "Come with us. You can warm up at our house, get something to eat. We have a guest room. You can stay the night." Claire stared at him. Strangers didn't do this. People didn't just take in random women from bus stations. She'd learned that much in the last 12 hours. The world was full of closed doors and turned backs. "Why?" she asked. Jonathan looked down at his children, then back at her. "Because my kids are right. It's too cold." Sam reached out and took Claire's hand. His fingers were small and warm even through his mittens. "Come on. Our house has a fireplace." Claire felt something crack inside her chest. Not break, just crack. Enough to let a tiny bit of warmth through. She stood up on shaking legs. The divorce papers fell from her lap onto the bench, but she didn't pick them up. She didn't want them anymore. Jonathan's car was a dark SUV with car seats in the back. Alex climbed into the front passenger seat, while Emily and Sam scrambled into the middle row. Claire slid into the back, still wearing Jonathan's coat. The drive took 15 minutes through streets thick with snow. Nobody spoke much. Sam hummed something under his breath. Emily kept turning around to look at Claire, her eyes full of questions she didn't ask. Jonathan's house sat at the end of a quiet street. It was a 2-story brick home with a porch light that cast yellow across the snow. Inside, it smelled like pine and something baked. "Take your shoes off," Emily said, already kicking off her boots. "Dad's weird about wet floors." Claire slipped out of her thin flats. Her feet were numb. "Go sit by the fire," Jonathan said, shrugging off his own coat in the entryway. "I'll make coffee." The living room had a stone fireplace with embers still glowing. Claire sank onto the couch and held her hands toward the heat, slowly, painfully, feeling returned to her fingers. The 3 children settled around her like birds. Sam sat on the floor near her feet. Emily perched on the arm of the couch. Alex stood by the fireplace, watching her with careful eyes. "Why were you at the bus station?" Sam asked. "Sam," Alex said sharply, "don't be nosy." "It's okay," Claire said quietly. She looked at the boy's open face and decided on a version of the truth. "I didn't have anywhere else to go." "Like us after Mom died," Emily said. The room went still. Claire looked up at the girl. "We didn't have anywhere to go either," Emily continued. "Grandma and Grandpa wanted us to move to Arizona, but Dad said no. He said home is where we belong." Jonathan appeared in the doorway with a mug of coffee. He handed it to Claire without meeting her eyes. "Kids, go get ready for bed." "But Dad, now." The children scattered. Claire heard footsteps on the stairs, the sound of running water, distant voices. Jonathan sat in the chair across from her. "I'm sorry about Emily. She doesn't always know when to stop talking." "It's fine." Claire wrapped her hands around the mug. The heat felt like mercy. "I'm sorry about your wife." Something flickered across Jonathan's face. "It's been 18 months. That's not very long. Long enough to learn how to keep going." He looked at her directly for the first time. "What happened to you tonight?" Claire took a sip of coffee. It was strong and sweet. "My husband filed for divorce. He said I was useless because I can't have children." The words came out flat. She'd expected them to hurt more, but they just sat there in the air like facts. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "That's not true." "Which part?" "All of it." Claire looked down at the coffee. "You don't know me. I know you're not useless." Jonathan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "And I know anyone who'd throw someone out in a snowstorm is the one with the problem. Not you." Something in Claire's throat went tight. She nodded because she couldn't speak. "The guest room is upstairs," Jonathan said after a moment. "Second door on the left. There are clean towels in the bathroom. Help yourself to anything you need. I'll leave in the morning." "You don't have to." Claire looked up sharply. "What?" Jonathan stood and walked to the fireplace. He added another log, watching the flames catch. "Stay as long as you need to, a few days, a week, however long it takes to figure out what comes next." "You don't even know me," Claire said again. "No," Jonathan turned to face her. "But my kids are watching how I respond to someone in trouble. I want them to learn that you help when you can, that you don't turn away from people who need it." Claire felt the crack in her chest widen a little more. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Jonathan almost smiled. "You haven't met us at breakfast. It gets loud." That night, Claire lay in the guest room bed under a thick quilt. She could hear the house settling around her, footsteps overhead, a door closing, the furnace kicking on. For the first time in years, she felt something close to safe. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. The snow, the bus station, Jonathan and his children. Downstairs, she found chaos. Sam was crying because he couldn't find his library book. Emily was arguing with Alex about whose turn it was to feed the dog. Jonathan stood at the stove making pancakes with one hand and packing lunches with the other. He looked up when Claire appeared in the doorway. "Coffee's fresh." "Can I help?" "You don't have to. I want to." Jonathan handed her a spatula. "Keep them from burning while I find Sam's book." Claire stepped up to the stove. The pancakes sizzled. Emily appeared at her elbow. "Do you like chocolate chips?" the girl asked. "I do." "Me too. Dad never puts enough in." Claire smiled and reached for the bag of chocolate chips on the counter. She scattered a generous handful across the next pancake. Emily grinned. "I like you." By the time Jonathan returned with the library book, breakfast was on the table. The children ate like they were starving. Claire sat at the end of the table with her coffee and watched them. This was what a family looked like. Messy and loud and full of life. After the kids left for school, Jonathan cleared the dishes while Claire dried them. They worked in comfortable silence. "I have to go to the office today," Jonathan said finally. "You're welcome to stay here. Make yourself at home." "What do you do?" "I run a tech company, software development mostly." Claire nodded. That explained the nice house, the easy offer of help. "What did you do before?" Jonathan asked. "Before your marriage?" "I was in college, business degree. I dropped out when I got married." She set a plate in the drying rack. "My husband said I didn't need to finish. He made enough for both of us." "Do you want to go back?" The question caught her off guard. "To school? To whatever you left behind?" Claire looked out the window at the snow melting in the morning sun. "I don't know what I want anymore." "That's okay," Jonathan said. "You've got time to figure it out." He left for work an hour later. Claire spent the day exploring the house in small increments. She washed her dress in the laundry room. She read a book from Jonathan's shelf. She made soup from ingredients she found in the refrigerator. When the children came home, they found her in the kitchen. "You're still here," Sam said, his face breaking into a smile. "I'm still here," Claire confirmed. That became the pattern. Days turned into a week. Jonathan offered to pay her to help with the household. Claire refused at first, but he insisted. He needed someone to manage the chaos, someone to make sure homework got done, and lunches got packed, and the house didn't fall apart. It wasn't charity, he said. It was a job. Claire accepted because she needed something to hold on to, something to make her feel less like a burden and more like she belonged. She moved out of the guest room and into a small room off the kitchen that Jonathan said used to be his wife's office. It had a desk and a window that looked out on the backyard. Claire unpacked the few belongings she'd managed to retrieve from her old apartment. Didn't take long. Her whole life fit into 2 bags. But as she placed her books on the shelf and hung her dresses in the closet, something shifted inside her. This wasn't home yet, but it could be. 3 weeks passed before Claire realized she'd stopped flinching when someone entered a room. She was folding laundry in the living room when Jonathan came home early from work. Her hands kept moving, steady on the warm cotton. Before, she would have frozen. Before, she would have waited to see if she'd done something wrong. Jonathan dropped his briefcase by the door and loosened his tie. "How was your day?" "Good," Claire said. "Sam got 100 on his spelling test. He told me you've been practicing with him every night. He just needed someone to listen." She set a folded shirt on the pile. "Emily made the basketball team." Jonathan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "She didn't tell me she tried out. She was nervous you'd be disappointed if she didn't make it." "I wouldn't have been." "I know," Claire said gently. "But she's 10. She doesn't always know that." Jonathan sat on the arm of the couch. He looked tired. "I miss things. Important things. You're doing your best. My best isn't always enough." He rubbed his face. "Sarah would have known about the tryouts. She would have been there." Sarah. It was the first time he'd said his wife's name out loud in Claire's presence. The word hung in the air like smoke. Claire set down the shirt she was folding. "You can't be 2 people." "I know." Jonathan stood and picked up his briefcase. "I just wish I didn't have to choose between being at work and being here." He went upstairs before Claire could respond. She heard his bedroom door close. That night, Claire lay in her small room and stared at the ceiling. She'd been here almost a month now. She had a routine. She had purpose. But underneath it all, the old voice still whispered, "You're temporary. You're a convenience. The moment they don't need you anymore, you'll be back on that bench." She pressed her palms against her eyes and tried to quiet the voice. But it persisted, familiar and cruel. The same voice that had lived in her head through 6 years of marriage. The same one her husband had fed every time she failed to get pregnant. Useless. Broken. Not enough. The next morning, Emily had a meltdown over a math assignment. She sat at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face, crumpling paper after paper. "I can't do it," the girl said. "I'm stupid." Claire pulled up a chair beside her. "You're not stupid. Then why don't I understand it?" "Because it's hard, and hard things take time." Claire smoothed out one of the crumpled papers. "Show me what you're stuck on." They worked through the problems together. Claire didn't give Emily the answers. She asked questions until the girl found them herself. When Emily finally understood, her whole face lit up. "I got it," she said. "You did." Emily threw her arms around Claire's neck. The hug was sudden and fierce. "Thank you." Claire held very still. She couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her like this, like she mattered. "You're welcome," she whispered. Alex was harder to reach. He watched Claire with careful eyes, always polite but distant. He did his homework without being asked. He helped with dinner. He never complained. One evening, Claire found him sitting on the porch steps in the dark. "It's cold out here," she said. Alex shrugged. He was wearing his father's old jacket, too big in the shoulders. Claire sat down beside him. "Want to talk about it?" "About what?" "Whatever's keeping you out here." Alex picked at a loose thread on the jacket. "Do you think Dad's okay?" The question surprised her. "Why do you ask?" "He's different lately. He smiles more. But sometimes I catch him looking sad when he thinks no one's watching." Alex looked at her directly. "Is it because of you?" Claire's stomach tightened. "I don't think so." "I don't mean it in a bad way." Alex pulled the jacket tighter. "I mean, maybe he's sad because he likes you, and he thinks he shouldn't." Claire's breath caught. "Alex, it's okay if he does," the boy said quickly. "I just want to know if you're staying." "What?" "Everyone leaves eventually. Mom didn't want to, but she did. And I know you're only here because Dad's paying you. So I need to know if you're going to leave too." Claire looked at this serious boy who was trying so hard to hold everything together. She thought about lying, about giving him easy reassurance. But he deserved better than that. "I don't know what's going to happen," she said honestly. "But I'm not planning to leave right now. And if that changes, I promise I'll tell you first." Alex nodded slowly. "Okay." They sat in silence for a while. Then Alex stood and went inside. Claire stayed on the steps, her heart beating too fast. She hadn't let herself think about Jonathan that way. Couldn't afford to. He was her employer, her refuge. The person who'd saved her from freezing to death in a bus station. But she'd noticed things. The way he laughed at Sam's terrible jokes. The way he listened when his children talked, even when he was exhausted. The way he'd given her space to heal without demanding anything in return. And yes, she'd noticed how he looked at her sometimes. Quick glances when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The way his hand would hover near her elbow when she reached for something on a high shelf, ready to steady her if she needed it. But wanting something and deserving it were different things. Claire had learned that lesson well. 2 months in, Jonathan called a family meeting. The children gathered in the living room with varying degrees of curiosity. Claire started to leave, but Jonathan stopped her. "This involves you too," he said. She sat in the chair by the fireplace while Jonathan stood in front of them all. "I want to talk about how things are going," he began, "with Claire being here." Sam bounced on the couch. "I like it. She makes good cookies." "It's not just about cookies," Emily said. "She helps with everything." Alex didn't say anything, but he nodded. Jonathan looked at Claire. "The kids and I talked, and we all agree. We'd like you to stay, permanently, not as temporary help, as part of our household." Claire's throat went tight. "Jonathan, I know you're worried about being a burden," he continued, So I want to make this official. I'm offering you a real position. Household manager, fair salary, health insurance, everything. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. Jonathan's voice was firm. You've brought something back to this house that we lost. You care about my children. They care about you. And honestly, we function better with you here. Claire looked at the three faces watching her. Emily hopeful. Sam excited. Alex cautious but open. What about you? She asked Jonathan quietly. What do you want? Something flickered in his eyes. I want you to stay. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. Claire felt it settle in her chest. Okay, she said. I'll stay. Sam cheered. Emily grinned. Alex smiled. Small but genuine. Jonathan held her gaze for a moment longer. Then he cleared his throat and started talking about logistics, about salary numbers, about setting up benefits. But Claire barely heard him. She was too busy trying to understand the warmth spreading through her chest. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth holding on to. That night, Jonathan stopped by her room with paperwork, contract details, tax forms, official documentation of her employment. I want everything legal, he said, setting the folder on her desk. So there's no question. You're not a guest. You're not doing us a favor. This is your job, and you're entitled to everything that comes with it. Claire picked up the contract. The salary he'd written down was generous, more than generous. This is too much, she said. It's market rate for someone managing a household and 3 kids. Jonathan leaned against the doorframe. Don't undersell yourself, Claire. She looked up at him. Why are you doing this? Because you deserve stability. Because you're good at this. Because my kids are happier than they've been in 18 months, he met her eyes. Because you deserve to feel secure. Claire's vision blurred. She blinked hard. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Just stay. After he left, Claire read through the entire contract twice. Everything was spelled out clearly. Expectations, compensation, time off. It was professional and thorough and completely legitimate. But underneath the formality, she could read what he wasn't saying. I need you here. Please don't leave. The months that followed were the happiest Claire could remember. She fell into rhythm with the family. She learned that Alex loved science documentaries and hated peas. That Emily would talk for hours if you let her, jumping from topic to topic without pause. That Sam had nightmares sometimes, and the only thing that helped was someone sitting with him until he fell back asleep. She learned that Jonathan took his coffee black, that he worked too much and slept too little, that he carried his grief quietly, folding it into the corners of his days where his children wouldn't see. And she started to feel something dangerous. It crept up slowly. The way her heart would skip when Jonathan walked into a room. The way she'd find excuses to stay up late so they could talk after the kids were asleep. The way she'd catch herself watching him with his children and thinking about what it would be like if this were really hers. But she crushed those thoughts every time they surfaced. This wasn't real. This was a job. She was the household manager. Nothing more. Jonathan seemed to be fighting the same battle. She'd catch him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. He'd start to reach for her hand, then pull back. He'd stand too close in the kitchen, then step away like he'd been burned. They circled each other carefully, both terrified of crossing a line that would ruin everything. Then came the phone call. Claire was making dinner when Jonathan came home early. His face was unreadable. Can we talk? He asked. Her stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just got an offer. He set his briefcase down. A major contract, the kind that could triple our revenue. That's good, isn't it? It is. But there's a catch. Jonathan ran his hand through his hair. They want me in New York for 6 months. On site. Full-time. Claire's hand stilled on the cutting board. 6 months? I'd have to relocate, find an apartment, be there Monday through Friday minimum. He looked at her. I don't know how to do that and take care of my kids. You could bring them with you? Uproot them from school, from their friends, from the only home they remember with their mother? Jonathan shook his head. I can't ask them to do that. Then turn it down. This opportunity won't come again. He sat at the kitchen table, suddenly looking exhausted. This is the kind of deal that sets up their future. College funds, security, everything I've been working toward. Claire turned off the stove and sat across from him. What do you want to do? I don't know. Jonathan met her eyes. What would you do? The question caught her off guard. He was asking her opinion like it mattered, like she had a say in his family's future. I think, she said slowly, that your kids need you more than they need money. They need both. No, they need you, present, alive, not stretched between two cities and drowning in stress. Claire leaned forward. But if this is really that important, then find a way to keep everyone together. There is no way. Yes, there is. The words came out before she could stop them. Take all of us with you. Jonathan stared at her. What? Move the whole family to New York. 6 months isn't forever. Kids are resilient. They'll adjust. Claire's heart was pounding, but she kept going. I can manage the transition, find schools, set up the new house, keep everything running while you focus on work. Claire, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. She held his gaze. Let me do this. Let me help. Something broke in Jonathan's expression. He reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm against hers. Why? He asked quietly. Because I love you. Because I love your children. Because the thought of being apart from any of you makes my chest ache. But she couldn't say that. So instead she said, because you do the same for me. Jonathan's thumb brushed across her knuckles. I would. They sat there in the kitchen with the half-made dinner going cold on the counter. Jonathan didn't let go of her hand. If we do this, he said finally, we do it right. I find a place big enough for all of us. You get a raise for managing an interstate move, and we sit down with the kids tonight and make sure they're okay with it. Okay. Claire. His voice dropped lower. I need to tell you something. Her breath caught. What? These past few months, having you here, watching you with my kids, getting to know you. Jonathan stood and pulled her to her feet, still holding her hand. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Feel what? That I love you. The words came out rough, like they'd been held back too long. I'm in love with you, Claire. Have been for weeks, maybe longer. And I know this complicates everything. I know I'm your employer, and that puts you in an impossible position. But I can't go to New York and spend 6 months pretending I don't want this. That I don't want you. Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who'd pulled her out of the snow and given her a life, and was now offering her something she'd thought she'd never have again. Say something, Jonathan said. I love you too. The words tumbled out. I've been trying not to. I've been so scared of ruining this, of losing everything if you didn't feel the same way. But I do. I love you. Jonathan cupped her face with both hands. You're not going to lose anything. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He leaned his forehead against hers. Because I'm not letting you go. Then he kissed her, gentle and certain, and Claire felt every wall she'd built come crashing down. When they finally pulled apart, Claire was shaking. What do we do now? She whispered. Jonathan smiled, real and full. Now we tell the kids we're moving to New York. The children took the news better than expected. Sam was excited about seeing the Statue of Liberty. Emily worried about missing her basketball season. Alex asked practical questions about schools and logistics. But that night, after everyone went to bed, Claire heard footsteps outside her door. A soft knock. "Come in," she said. Alex stood in the doorway in his pajamas. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." The boy sat on the edge of her bed. "Are you and Dad together now?" Claire's heart hammered. "What makes you ask that? He looks at you different, and you look at him different too." Alex picked at the edge of her quilt. "I just want to know if it's real, or if you're doing it because he's your boss." The question hit Claire like cold water. She'd been so caught up in her feelings for Jonathan that she hadn't stopped to think how it looked. She was his employee. He paid her salary. The power imbalance was undeniable. "It's real," she said quietly. "I promise you that." "Okay." Alex stood to leave, then turned back. "Just don't hurt him." "He's been hurt enough." After the boy left, Claire sat alone in the dark. Alex's words echoed in her head, mixing with older, crueler ones. "You're useless. You can't give him what he needs. You're just convenient." She pressed her hands against her face. What was she doing? Jonathan was offering her everything, but what could she offer him in return? She couldn't give him more children. She couldn't be the partner Sarah had been. She was just a broken woman he'd found in a bus station. The old fear wrapped around her throat like a fist. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire threw herself into planning the move. She researched schools. She found a furnished apartment in Manhattan, big enough for all 5 of them. She organized movers and coordinated timelines, and created spreadsheets for everything. Jonathan noticed her withdrawal. She could see it in his eyes when she'd pull away from his touch or make excuses to avoid being alone with him. "Talk to me," he said one evening after the kids were asleep. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm just busy with the move." "Claire," he caught her hand. "What's going on?" She looked at their joined hands. His fingers were long and strong, capable. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this being a mistake, of hurting your kids, of you waking up one day and realizing I'm not worth it." The words spilled out. "I can't give you more children, Jonathan. I can't replace Sarah. I'm just the woman you hired to manage your household." Jonathan pulled her close. "Stop. It's true." "No, it's not." He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "I don't want you to replace Sarah. I don't need more children. And you're not just anything. You're Claire. You're the woman who loves my kids like they're hers, who makes this house feel like a home again, who's brave enough to rebuild her life from nothing." "I'm not brave." "Yes, you are." His voice was firm. "You're the bravest person I know." Claire felt tears slip down her cheeks. "What if I mess this up? Then we'll figure it out together." Jonathan kissed her forehead. "But you have to stop running. Stop waiting for me to realize you're not good enough, because that's never going to happen." She wanted to believe him, but the fear was still there, cold and familiar. The move to New York happened in early September. The apartment Jonathan had rented was in a building with a doorman and views of Central Park. The kids got their own rooms. Claire had a small office space where she could work. It should have felt like a fresh start. But Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing pretend, that any moment someone would realize she didn't belong here. Jonathan's work consumed him. He left early and came home late, exhausted and distracted. The kids struggled to adjust to new schools. Emily cried herself to sleep the first week. Sam had nightmares about getting lost in the subway. Alex became quiet and withdrawn. Claire held everything together during the day. But at night, she lay awake and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. If pushing for this move had been selfish. If she'd disrupted this family's healing for her own need to feel needed. 1 month in, she found Emily sitting on the fire escape outside her bedroom window. "You're not supposed to be out there," Claire said. "I know." Emily didn't move. Claire climbed out and sat beside her. The city stretched out below them, all light and noise. "I miss home," Emily said finally. "I know. I miss my basketball team. I miss my friends. I miss Mom." The girl's voice broke. "And I feel bad for missing her, because you're here, and you're nice, and I like you. But you're not her." Claire's throat tightened. "I'm not trying to be her." "I know, but Dad looks at you the way he used to look at Mom, and it makes me feel like I'm supposed to forget her. Your dad loved your mom. He still does. That doesn't go away just because he loves me too." Claire reached for Emily's hand. "Love isn't a replacement. It's not one or the other. Your heart has room for both." Emily looked at her with red eyes. "Does yours?" The question stopped Claire cold. She thought about Sarah, the woman whose office she'd moved into, whose family she'd joined, whose husband she'd fallen in love with. She'd been so careful not to intrude on Sarah's memory, so afraid of being seen as a replacement. But maybe that was the wrong question. Maybe this wasn't about replacement at all. "Yes," Claire said. "My heart has room for your mom too, because she made you. She made your brothers. She made your dad into the man I love. I didn't know her, but I'm grateful for her every single day." Emily leaned against her shoulder. "I think she would have liked you." Claire wrapped her arm around the girl. "I hope so." After that night, something shifted. The kids stopped fighting the change and started accepting it. They made friends at their new schools. They explored the city together on weekends. They built new routines. And Claire started to believe she might actually belong here. Jonathan noticed the change. He came home early one Friday and found Claire helping Sam with a science project at the kitchen table. "Look, Dad," Sam said, holding up a volcano made of clay and paint. "Claire helped me make it. It looks great, buddy." Jonathan met Claire's eyes over Sam's head. Something warm passed between them. That night, after the kids were asleep, Jonathan pulled Claire onto the couch beside him. "I need to tell you something," he said. Her stomach tightened. "What?" "You were right. About bringing everyone to New York. This has been good for us." He laced his fingers through hers. "Not just the work stuff, all of it. Being here together. Becoming a real family. We were a real family before. No. Before, we were people living in the same house. Now we're something more." Jonathan turned to face her fully. "I want to make this permanent, Claire. Not just the job. Not just living together. I want you to marry me." Claire's breath stopped. "Jonathan, I love you. My kids love you. You love us. And I know you're scared. I know you think you're not enough. But you're wrong." He cupped her face. "You're everything. And I don't want to spend another day without making sure you know that. I can't give you children. I don't care. Everyone cares eventually. Not me." Jonathan's voice was absolute. "I have 3 children who need a mother more than they need siblings. I have a partner who makes me better. That's enough. More than enough." Claire felt something crack open inside her chest. The voice that had whispered useless for so long finally went quiet. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Yes. I'll marry you." Jonathan kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to hear those words. They got married in December, a small ceremony at City Hall, with just the kids and a few close friends. Claire wore a simple blue dress. Jonathan held her hand like he was afraid she might disappear. When they exchanged vows, Claire looked at the 3 children watching them. Alex stood tall and serious. Emily grinned. Sam bounced on his toes. This was her family now. Really and truly hers. The 6 months in New York turned into 8, then 10. Jonathan's contract extended. Claire enrolled in night classes at NYU, finishing the business degree she'd abandoned years ago. She discovered she was good at logistics and planning. A professor recommended her for an internship at a nonprofit that helped women rebuild their lives after divorce. The work felt like coming home. When they finally returned to their house, it was summer. Everything was blooming. Claire stood in the backyard and breathed in the familiar air. "It's good to be back," Jonathan said, coming up behind her. She leaned against him. "It is. Though I wouldn't have minded staying in New York. The kids needed to come home, to remember where they came from." Jonathan turned her to face him. "What about you? Where do you feel like you come from?" Claire looked at the house, at the window where she'd first seen Sam's face pressed against the glass, at the porch where she'd talked to Alex on that cold night, at the kitchen where she'd made 1,000 meals for this family. "Here," she said. "I come from here now." Claire finished her bachelor's degree the following year, then started a master's program in social work. She got a job at a women's center, helping others navigate the aftermath of failed marriages and shattered lives. Every woman who walked through the door reminded her of herself sitting in that bus station. She told them the same thing Jonathan had told her. "You're not broken. You're not useless. You're just at the beginning of something new." Years passed. Alex went to college. Sam grew tall and serious like his older brother. Emily became a fierce, funny teenager who wanted to change the world. And Claire kept building, her career, her family, her life. On the day of Emily's high school graduation, Claire sat in the auditorium between Jonathan and Sam. Alex had flown in from his freshman year at MIT. They were all there, together, whole. Emily walked across the stage to receive her diploma. Then she stepped up to the microphone for the valedictorian speech. "I want to thank my family," she began. Her eyes found them in the crowd. "My brothers, who drove me crazy but always had my back. My dad, who showed me what it means to never give up. And Claire." She said the name with such warmth that Claire's eyes immediately filled. 7 years ago, Claire came into our lives when we were broken, when we didn't know how to be a family anymore. She could have left 100 times. She could have decided we were too much work, too much baggage, too much grief. But she stayed. She loved us when we weren't sure we deserved to be loved. She became my mom not because she had to, but because she chose to. And that choice changed everything. Emily's voice wavered. "So this diploma isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who helped me get here. But especially to the woman who taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when it's hard. Claire, this is for you." The auditorium erupted in applause. Jonathan squeezed Claire's hand. Sam threw his arm around her shoulders. Claire couldn't stop crying. That night, after the celebration dinner, after the guests had gone home, Claire stood in the backyard under the stars. She thought about that night 7 years ago, the snow, the bus station, the moment Jonathan and his children had stopped in front of her. "Come with me," he'd said, not knowing it would save her life. She thought she was useless, broken beyond repair, but she'd been wrong. She just needed someone to show her what she was worth. Jonathan came outside and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" "That night, when you found me. Best night of my life." Claire turned in his arms. "Mine too." They stood together in the garden they'd built, in the home they'd made, surrounded by the family they'd chosen. Claire had finally found where she belonged, and it was exactly where she'd always been meant to be.